Good evening and welcome to RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Tonight, in front of the nation, President Trump delivers a primetime address from the East Room of the White House. Earlier today, Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said tonight's presidential announcement is all about protecting the integrity of our elections. This as the mainstream media pushes a false narrative against truth, evidence, and receipts. Here's Karoline Leavitt fielding a question from the fake news earlier today.
I would encourage everyone to tune in tonight. I've seen a lot of reporting and frankly misreporting about what the president will say. I think the American people will be relieved to hear what they are hearing from the president of the United States and his commitment to transparency and the focus on the integrity of our elections tonight. I think all Republicans and Democrats should recognize this should be a nonpartisan issue. If we don't have safe and secure elections in our country, we cannot have a country. It is a vital part of our democracy, of our constitutional republic. The president will be speaking about that tonight. And in addition, at the very same time, of course, he is working on all of these economic issues that the American people have at home. I just read to you the latest inflation numbers are looking good, the best report in 6 years. The president, Republicans and Democrats and all Americans have this president to thank for the largest tax cuts in American history, which every Democrat on Capitol Hill voted against. You have this president to thank for the Trump accounts for our children and securing the future of the American dream. So this president is doing a lot, but obviously safe and secure elections are a true tenet of our constitutional republic, and the president will be speaking about that tonight. Well, first of all, Garrett, I think part of the problem is that the media has refused to acknowledge that tens of millions of Americans across the country share the concerns of this president about the sanctity of our elections. And your premise of your question, you're jumping ahead to a conclusion in this speech before even hearing it yourself. I think that everyone should tune in tonight, including the people in this room, and you should report on the president's speech and the findings that he is going to reveal in this speech with a little bit of honesty and a little bit of integrity, because it will shock you if you have an honest eye listening to the president tonight, and everything he is saying will be backed by facts and by evidence that will be provided this evening. And again, Garrett, I think all Americans, Democrat, Republican, should agree that we are the greatest country in the history of the world. We should have the safest and most secure elections in the history of the world. And what the president will be speaking about tonight will show you that perhaps that is not the case, and we need to make some adjustments moving forward, including the Save America Act, as Rachel pointed out, is a key legislative priority for this president on Capitol Hill, and he wants to see all senators and members of Congress voting in favor of the Save America Act because it's crucially important as we move forward.
So tonight's national address is a kickoff of sorts for the midterm election, which is just 3.5 months away. Pretty much 3 months and 18 days, so under 4 months. And tonight we're hearing reports that a few networks won't air President Trump's speech, which is a blatant act of censorship. And let me ask you a question. If President Trump is lying and there are no receipts and evidence of 2020 election fraud, wouldn't you want to cover that as a news organization? Wouldn't you want to investigate his claims, which again are based on evidence and receipts? That's the question. If you just take that 30,000-foot view as a news organization, we're here, we're this network, we're that network, we're going to cover the news and investigate, and we're going to go there, and all those stupid sayings that they have over there. And they won't even air his speech because they're afraid of the truth. We're seeing censorship tonight, right now, on Thursday, July 16th, when some of these networks don't air the President of the United States' speech, a national primetime address, 3.5 months away from the election. They don't want to air it. Again, the question is, if President Trump is lying, if he has no evidence and no receipts and he's just going to go and do this speech, wouldn't you as a news network want to cover the President of the United States saying these type of things and then investigate it? Go ahead, go investigate. Because what you'll come up with is something that you can't win in the court of public opinion. When you have evidence and receipts, the court of public opinion says, y'all can't lie to us anymore. So isn't that interesting that they're not choosing to air his speech? We'll get into some more of that later. Who cares about the mainstream media anyway? I'm glad there's conservative media. Thank you guys for live streaming, watching, whether live or on replay right now. And the fact is about 2020, by the way, the Democrats used the COVID pandemic to take an election from the American people. Full stop. Now, prior to the November 3rd election, on September 9th, a special RNC midterm national convention will take place in Dallas, Texas. This, as the White House is saying tonight on X and Truth Social, defending America's election integrity is paramount and that American elections are for American citizens. We'll get into what the Save America Act is all about, as many of you guys already know, but just in case we have a couple extra viewers tonight, we'll go over the Save America Act, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Saving this country, making sure we have free and fair, honest elections. That's the goal. The Save America Act should pass. That is something that is perfect. Let's get it done. We'll see what happens. There has to be a lot more momentum on Capitol Hill. We'll see if after tonight's speech, if that'll kick into high gear. Meantime, earlier today, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted a conference on far-left terrorism. Here's a recap from his speech along with other members of the Trump administration.
This is a distinctive and unique evil. It has always been driven by a hatred, above all else, a hatred for civilization itself. It is a revolt of the worst against the best, a revolt of the weak and the cowardly against the strong and the good. It is perpetrated by those who cannot build, who cannot create, who cannot achieve great things, and take their revenge upon the world for their own inadequacy by seeking to destroy those who can. This is what radical leftism is. It may wear various different slogans and ideologies across place and time. They can call themselves anti-capitalist or anti-imperialist or communist or anarchist or Marxist, but the fundamental character is always the same. It's always the same. It is a poisonous resentment cloaked in the language of equality and justice and liberation, an overwhelming need to tear down what greater men have built, to wreck what is beautiful and what is right on behalf of people who are only filled with ugliness and have nothing else to offer the world. Through violence and through terror, they once again seek to impose their ugliness on all of us.
Here in the United States, we have taken the necessary and essential action of formally recognizing left-wing violence as a form of political terrorism that is a direct threat to our national security and the survival of our Republican form of government. President Trump issued a directive. In our parlance, it's called a National Security Presidential Memorandum, or NSPM, NSPM 7 to be exact, that directs for the first time in American history all of our law enforcement and intelligence agencies to work together to disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute these political terrorists that are operating in our country. It's very important to understand that left-wing political terrorism seeks as its ultimate end the overthrow of our system and form of government. And we've seen this has taken place many times in many places throughout the years, and Secretary Rubio has provided you many examples. Left-wing terrorism always ends in bloodshed, misery, and suffering. It only can travel in one direction. There's no point at which the left-wing terrorist is satisfied with his gains and ceases progressing. Inevitably, left to run its course, it always becomes a gulag. It always becomes the mass imprisonment of political enemies, the stripping of their rights and freedoms, inflicting immense pain, humiliation, suffering, in order to establish complete and total control. Control through psychological and physical and actual terror. And we have to understand that that is the scope and the extent of the threat that we face.
We have spent decades developing the world's most sophisticated financial counterterrorism capabilities. And now we are mobilizing some of the same tools that we have deployed against terrorists abroad to confront this emerging threat here at home. Like every form of illicit finance, these networks rely on the global financial system. It is our mandate to deny terrorist groups access to those channels. Now, we think of nonprofits and charities as good, altruistic organizations, and most of them are. We think they represent the very best of civil society. Many of them do. But the very qualities that make these institutions worthy of the public's trust can also make them appealing to those who endeavor to exploit them. At President Trump's direction, Treasury is expanding its efforts to identify organizations that abuse charitable and nonprofit structures as vehicles for illicit finance. We are examining where tax-exempt status has been exploited, where charitable entities have become financial conduits for foreign influence activity, and how those entrusted with stewardship of these organizations have instead enabled violence. Where the evidence leads, we will not hesitate to follow. And of course, we will hold these organizations, officers, directors accountable. And just as financial institutions must know their clients, they must know their grantees. That work is well underway. In the fall, the United States designated 4 far-left Antifa extremist groups abroad as foreign terrorist organizations, denying them access to the U.S. financial system and depriving them of resources they need to carry out attacks. Meanwhile, in this administration alone, OFAC has also sanctioned 17 sham charities and nonprofit organizations for funding Hamas's terrorist activities and operations. As Treasury continues to map and disrupt the flow of funding that enables these entities to operate, no terror organization should delude itself into the belief that its financing lies beyond our reach. No facilitator should assume that anonymity confers impunity, and no jurisdiction should expect to enable or harbor these activities without consequence.
Quite the conference earlier today, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're going to get to a number of interviews and the 24/7 news cycle, of course, as we get ready to go to D.C. for this national primetime address here on RSBN. All brought to you by some great sponsors, including All Family Pharmacy. And being prepared can make all the difference when it comes to your family's health care, whether you need an everyday prescription, a medication for a common illness, or simply want to keep your medicine cabinet stocked. It's always better to plan ahead. That's why we recommend All Family Pharmacy. They offer more than 400 medications, from maintenance medications and antibiotics to ivermectin, GLP-1 therapies, NAD+, and other wellness options. And what really sets them apart is their customer service, because when you call, you actually get a real person who can help you. Whether you're placing an order, you have questions about your prescription, or need guidance through the process, their team is there for you. And you can even speak with a licensed pharmacist if you have medication questions. And ordering is simple. All you have to do is complete a secure online medical questionnaire. One of their licensed physicians reviews your information and, if appropriate, writes your prescription. So your medication is then shipped straight to your door. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN10 promo code. You get 10% at checkout. And that's that number right there, 561-717-6794. All Family Pharmacy. Let's go from AFP to Birch Gold Group. We wouldn't be celebrating America 250 if it wasn't for a strong foundation, of course, set by the framers. You know, Alexander Hamilton built America's financial foundation on the principle of sound, stable money, a principle later embodied by the gold standard. However, of course, we abandoned that discipline back in 1971 and have since seen inflation erode the dollar's value. So what is the foundation of your savings? Is it gold, or something that can be shaken, disrupted, or devalued? Birch Gold Group has been helping Americans solidify their savings with gold for the past 15 years. They'll help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Learn how gold fits into your portfolio by texting the word Trump to that number, 989898. You'll receive a free, no-obligation info kit, and also They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews. So if you'd like, you can let Birch Gold help build your foundation with gold. Just text that word Trump to that number, 989898, as we are about 12 minutes from the top of the hour here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, at 9 o'clock tonight, the national primetime address, President Trump to talk about election integrity. That per Carolyn Levitt, who we were all happy to see back at that podium in D.C. Joining us now is RSBN host, writer, and former assistant press secretary at DHS under President Trump, Matt Cain. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, definitely. With the midterm election that less than 4 months away, this seems like a perfect time to hear a speech from the president about election integrity. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I don't think the timing is coincidental. Obviously, a big national election already coming up. Hard to believe halfway through the president's second term. And I think the president pays great attention to all the details. And I don't think the timing, again, is any coincidence. You saw a lot of the revelations that came out of Fulton County, Georgia, and that raid and that investigation, which I think the president's probably going to touch on a little bit tonight, but definitely not a coincidence. And this is really the most important issue in my view. I know any given election you look at, they poll the most important issue among voters. And obviously during the 2024 election, immigration, that is absolutely undeniably important. You talk about the economy and foreign affairs, but really the way I see it is if you don't have your election secure, none of those issues are really going to be able to be addressed in the way that the people want anyway. So election integrity to me has to be the most important issue. And I know it's kind of been a slow drip. It's been a very long time. We're talking about the 2020 elections coming up on 6 years now, but these things do take time, especially when you want to deliver it in a way that really is undeniable to the masses. And I think once you tackle this issue, you can really be serious about the other issues. Now, the president's done a great job in addressing so many others, but it's in the face of a lot of resistance. You talk about illegal immigration and really the crisis at the border that happened under Joe Biden that now kind of really are still dealing with those effects. It's not like every single person obviously has been deported yet. So when you talk about issues like immigration, that really meshes in with election integrity because they're certainly using bodies and some of these people that get fake Social Security numbers to flood the rolls with illegal voters that really, whether they vote or not, once they're on the voter rolls, there's certainly entities at play that use those and exploit them to stuff the ballot box. And as we know, that only goes in one direction every time they do that. So the timing is not coincidental, as you mentioned. And I think this really will be the most important address he's given to date. And then when all is said and done, when he leaves office, potentially ever, depending on what comes from it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, the evidence and the receipts, the facts, the truth. Isn't it interesting, Matt? We were talking about this earlier, that a few networks are deciding to partake in censorship. They don't even want to cover this. Can you believe it?
I can believe it. Unfortunately, I can believe it. I'm sure you're not totally surprised either. But it is, even in this current climate where there's so much partisanship throughout the news media, it is a little bit surprising because it's one thing when the president was running for office, meaning when he was out of office during the 2024 campaign, not holding the power of the office. They obviously don't always have to cover what he says, although they should as a major party candidate. But once the president of the United States, regardless of who that is, says he's making a primetime address, again, he's a very accessible president. This isn't just him speaking with reporters off the cuff on the South Lawn. This is something that 3 days ago, which that's even pretty far advanced notice considering how this president operates. There's a lot of high-flying assets and things that happen on a whim. But 3 days ago, he announces he's going to be giving this address. And to know that it's going to be something quite significant, to not cover it at all, really it implies guilt on their part anyway. And the irony is that some of these networks in particular, they air shows like The View on a daily basis and claim that this is a legitimate source of news. Yet when the president of the United States speaks to the nation in a very important address, prime time, 9 p.m., to cover that, I should say to not cover that or cover up his remarks, really makes you wonder what they have to hide. I think you and I both know what I'm referring to there. But to be honest with you, I think they're trying to not give light or coverage to whatever he's going to reveal tonight. But that's actually going to create more viewership in my mind to what the president's going to speak about tonight, because as we know, this is not the 1980s anymore, where the only source of information comes from your television. People are really getting most of their information from social media, online, phones, wherever other medium they use. And I think not only are they going to see what he has to say no matter what, but now there's this whole other ecosystem talking about how these three networks in particular, as I checked before we got on, it could be more at this point, but three major networks not airing what the president of the United States has to say is only going to add to that intrigue. And maybe people who aren't all that invested in politics or in current events are going to say, wait a second, that's certainly suspicious that three networks that claim to be mainstream and covering what's important aren't covering what the president has to say. It's only going to add to their intrigue, regardless of where they align politically. So I think it's pretty clear they're afraid of whatever he's going to say. They're already trying to debunk whatever he's going to say without knowing what it's going to be, which has been pretty fascinating to witness because you really have to ultimately wait and see. We've heard things that the president may go as far as claiming that 2 senators from Georgia are illegitimate. Some have said he's not going to go that far. I think there was a John Solomon report where he said he's probably not going to do that. But I think that's part of the game, too, really a slow drip to see what's getting out there to the people. And again, for the media to have 3 full days to try to get ahead of it and debunk what they don't know yet sort of implies that they're not really serious and they're not people that can be trusted, because any person that got dropped in here into the political world and doesn't really follow it and says, hold on a second, there's mainstream news networks, alleged mainstream news networks, that are debunking claims by the president of the United States that have not been fully made or released yet, pretty much tells you all you need to know about them.
Exactly. And then earlier today, we both watched, Carolyn Levitt at the podium there take on questions from one of the fake news networks that is not airing the speech tonight. So we could see that they're trying to debunk constantly. Interesting to see that. Actually, Director, why don't we have Matt on hold for a second? Let's play clip number 1, I believe, from Carolyn Levitt, her reaction to the reporter, for the fake news reporter from NBC that asked that question. Let's take a listen.
I would encourage everyone to tune in tonight. I've seen a lot of reporting and frankly misreporting about what the president will say. I think the American people will be relieved to hear what they are hearing from the president of the United States and his commitment to transparency and the focus on the integrity of our elections tonight. I think all Republicans and Democrats should recognize this should be a nonpartisan issue. If we don't have safe and secure elections in our country, we cannot have a country. It is a vital part of our democracy, of our constitutional republic. The president will be speaking about that tonight. And in addition, at the very same time, of course, he is working on all of these economic issues that the American people have at home. I just read to you the latest inflation numbers are looking good, the best report in 6 years. The president, Republicans and Democrats and all Americans have this president to thank for the largest tax cuts in American history, which every Democrat on Capitol Hill voted against. You have this president to thank for the Trump accounts for our children and securing the future of the American dream. So this president is doing a lot, but obviously safe and secure elections are a true tenet of our constitutional republic, and the president will be speaking about that tonight. Well, first of all, Garrett, I think part of the problem is that the media has refused to acknowledge that tens of millions of Americans across the country share the concerns of this president about the sanctity of our elections. And your premise of your question, you're jumping ahead to a conclusion in this speech before even hearing it yourself. I think that everyone should tune in tonight, including the people in this room, and you should report on the president's speech and the findings that he is going to reveal in this speech with a little bit of honesty and a little bit of integrity, because it will shock you if you have an honest eye listening to the president tonight, and everything he is saying will be backed by facts and by evidence that will be provided this evening. And again, Garrett, I think all Americans, Democrat, Republican, should agree that we are the greatest country in the history of the world. We should have the safest and most secure elections in the history of the world. And what the president will be speaking about tonight will show you that perhaps that is not the case, and we need to make some adjustments moving forward, including the Save America Act, as Rachel pointed out, is a key legislative priority for this president on Capitol Hill, and he wants to see all senators and members of Congress voting in favor of the Save America Act, because it's crucially important as we move forward.
So we'll be joined again by Matt Cain in just a second to talk about the Save America Act. We got to get in some sponsors, of course, as we know that the president will be taking to the podium there in about an hour from now. The first one is Kalshi.com/RSBN. 3 ways to get to Kalshi. You could use the QR code right there if you'd like, or go to Kalshi.com/RSBN or download the app. And if you go to Kalshi.com/RSBN, what you'll see is what will Trump say during his speech to the nation. So there's a lot of people on there that are either betting, trading, checking out the various polls that are out there. So Kalshi is a spot to go. More than 1 million users on that site, and that number is growing. Let's also go to one more sponsor before we get to Matt here. Let's go to Cove Pier. You know, most of us know there's chlorine in our tap water. We smell it, shrug, and then maybe drink it anyway, because we've been told it's what keeps our water safe. But what they don't tell you is what chlorine becomes after it's added to your water. And that's why it's so important to filter your water through Cove Pier, because chlorine itself isn't even the biggest problem. Chlorine levels in your water are regulated, but what's not regulated is chemicals that form when chlorine reacts with naturally occurring organic matter from rivers, soil, and plant matter. So when chlorine interacts with those particles, it creates chemical byproducts called THMs, and the government itself calls THMs probable human carcinogens. and they've been linked to disruption of your gut and cancer. Now, those pitcher filters that you see at the store won't fix this. They improve the taste of chlorine, but THMs require something more powerful, and that's exactly what Cove Pure is. Their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants. So it's not just chlorine or THMs, it's fluoride, PFAs, pharmaceuticals, and if it isn't water, Cove Pure removes it. And this thing doesn't just, it doesn't take up much room at all, really. It's not something you need to call someone in to install it. It's pretty sleek right there on the countertop. And the best part about Cove Pure is it lets you choose whatever temperature water you want. No more waiting for the kettle to boil to make a cup of tea or coffee. Just tap a button and you get hot, cold, or warm water instantly. And the feedback on Cove Pure from our viewers has been incredible, and people have told us that they can literally taste the difference. Clean water really is one of the best investments you can make for you and your family's health. Right now, they're giving RSBN viewers $250 off if you use our link. Go to covepure.com/RSBN right now. That's covepure.com/RSBN. All right, let's get back to RSBN's Matt Cain here, joining us live on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Matt, we were talking about Save America Act, and we were talking about what the leftist media is trying to do out there. Let's talk about the momentum on Capitol Hill, though. Are you concerned that, we see it from the executive branch, we see momentum there, but not really on Capitol Hill with Congress?
It's definitely a concern. I use the term concern lightly because under President Trump, it seems like he always finds a way to get what needs to be done, but it certainly makes it more difficult for him when, despite having a majority, it's a lot different from when a Democrat president has a majority in the Senate because they tend to vote in lockstep. So there's definitely some resistance there. We've seen that many times. I think today it was one of the other senators, Republican senators, that's been holding out on it. Once again, confirmed he probably will not vote to pass it. But again, you mentioned earlier the timing of this address that he's giving tonight. Who knows? Some of these people really don't want to be reasoned with. They're not going to change their views no matter what. But you never know how many people, not on the Democrat side, but perhaps some of the Republican holdouts, depending on what they see tonight, one would hope that they'd be willing to really consider the importance of this. And it's unfortunate you have to hope that evidence persuades them, because this evidence, a lot of this, maybe not what we're going to see tonight for the first time, but instances of election fraud or election database vulnerabilities have been out there for a very long time. And if people like you and I have heard this and read about it and see it, you have to figure that senators, specifically Republican senators, have seen it themselves. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully whatever the president delivers tonight can give them perhaps a nudge. And depending on what comes from this, again, I mentioned earlier, they mentioned that potentially there's going to be a revelation about 2 senators from Georgia being illegitimate. Again, I'm not confirming to know that. I don't necessarily know if that will or won't happen, but one would hope. And I just think it's important to note that not questioning elections that you don't like the results of, but instances of election fraud, not only is it common practice in our history, but our elected officials actually have an obligation to pursue those things. We know some of the more typical instances of election fraud allegations in certain elections, such as 2000, but even in 2004, in President Bush's second election, people should really look into what happened in Ohio in 2004. John Kerry contested it, and I think there are many instances back in the Kennedy-Nixon election. Certain states like Ohio and Illinois, they had some instances of fraud. So I think really there's the claim now that election conspiracy, election denying or election challenges are now considered a right-wing conspiracy theory tells you really who election fraud is benefiting. Because a long time ago, even regardless of who the fraud was allegedly benefiting or not benefiting, it seemed like it was at least covered and spoken about and litigated, at least within Congress, and moved on from. But the fact that now you're not even allowed to mention it as if it's something that's not even humanly possible in the United States of America pretty much tells you who's benefiting from it. And I think it's also important to note that tonight is a night that really can be one of the more significant set of remarks delivered by the president in either of his terms. And unfortunately, I think after so many years of being let down about these things coming to the light and justice and accountability, the conservatives, MAGA people, however you want to refer to the supporters of President Trump, there's this somewhat, if you want to call it blackpilling that goes on, where people say, yeah, but so what? The other side's never going to believe it, even if you present it. I think we need to move away from that thinking and that viewpoint, because it's really not about convincing the other side. Tonight isn't about an election. You're not trying to convince people to vote. What you're trying to do is present evidence. And evidence is what it is. The truth is the truth, regardless of whether people want to believe it or not. And I think the focus today by conservatives who are finally maybe getting a win. We've complained for so many years that the left just has run roughshod all over the country. We need accountability. Well, tonight might be one of the nights we finally get the beginning of a long period of accountability. And a lot of voices are claiming it doesn't matter. It's too old. This happened a long time ago. nothing's going to come of it. But I would say learn how to take a victory if you're on the side of President Trump. This is a big deal tonight. No sitting president has ever delivered an address, from what we understand he's going to speak about, that's this determinative and this important and influential in our country. So when you get something like this tonight, I really wouldn't waste time trying to argue with people about what the other side's going to do in response to it. You look at some of these socialist candidates that are claiming victories and destroying some of our cities. They're not worried about what Republican voters or Trump voters think about it, even though just based on the numbers, they're in the vast minority. If anyone should be nervous about the direction they're going, it should be the party in the vast minority of support, and yet they're just going all out to enforce their agenda. I think it's time that Trump supporters and MAGA voters adopt that same policy, take the wins when you get them, and really build some momentum and really give it the benefit of the doubt and see what comes of it. Because the fact that we're even talking about this in 2026 shows that the president has been patient and deliberate about finding the reality of the 2020 election. And the thing is, too, it's not just about his 2020 election, although that is the most important element of it. But as we mentioned, the two Georgia senators, Senate terms are 6 years. There very well could be, and I would even say there definitely are people in our government, elected government, who were not legitimately placed there. And that's an issue that's still to this day. That, you know, we talk about passing the Save America Act. Well, maybe if we had the actual representation that we the people voted for, he wouldn't have had this much trouble getting the act passed. Every little vote, every senator counts. So I think all of this is just take it in tonight, see what the president has to say, and don't worry about the backlash, because you're already seeing with the mainstream networks, they're not going to cover it. They're trying to debunk what he says, but it really doesn't matter. If you shut out the noise, if you turn off your news, if you get off the phone, if you have your government seeking accountability and justice, that is what's most important. And I would just caution everybody against ruining that momentum and your own potential happiness about it by letting the people that are going to find something to complain about no matter what anyway tell you that it's all a big lie.
No wonder the leftist media is not wanting to cover this tonight. Again, they shy away from evidence, truth, and receipts. They are doing an act of censorship tonight. It's pretty wild to watch. Now, recently on Truth Social, the president posted your Substack titled "How President Trump Revived American Pride and Patriotism in Time for America's 250th Birthday." For those who haven't read that yet, can you expound on it?
Sure. I think the president has talked a little bit about how towards the end of his first term, where he was obviously anticipating coming back for a second consecutive term, he was almost lamenting at the fact that he got the Olympics in 2028 that'll be coming 2 years from now. The American 250, not something that you received, but it was just going to fall in this current term. And even some of the other things the president was involved with, the Freedom 250, as I mentioned, he was almost a little bit upset that he wouldn't be the president presiding over it, despite getting it. The World Cup, FIFA was another one. And despite that, he actually, because of a lot of the election fraud we're talking about, ended up serving in this term. And I think really what my article was talking about was that 4-year gap where he was not in office anymore, and we saw so much destruction under Joe Biden. Unlike Democrats, who there's these recent polls that show only 20-something% or maybe 30% of Democrats consider themselves proud to be American because President Trump's the president. Historically, Republicans are always proud to be American, regardless of who the president is. And I think a little bit, however, during that 4 years of Joe Biden's term, it wasn't that they weren't proud to be American, but I think we'd all agree it's pretty hard to be excited about your country when you see some of the degenerative things that the Biden, and I will mention Harris administration, trotted out there for us to take as a country. And that was really what was representing us. So it's not that you weren't proud to be an American, but a little bit disappointed about what America had become, and illegitimately, I will add. So I think what President Trump did in coming back into the second term, it was full speed ahead and really utilizing what my article talks about is the D.C. landscape. It's such a historic place, but it was run down. Even during his first term, I think the president probably would have liked to have added more time to some of the things you're seeing him do now, but he was so bogged down with some of the impeachments and the things that they did to him in his first term. But really, what the article touches on is his utilization of the D.C. landscape and really celebrating it, not only cleaning it up and getting these fountains going and some of the beautification projects, but then even infusing sport into American culture again, using D.C. as the backdrop. We're going to have the IndyCar race at the end of August. You obviously saw the White House fights. You saw the flyovers during the Freedom 250. And it's not something we've really seen a lot, but really that should be the blueprint moving forward. If you're an American president, you're in tune with what American culture is all about. Why not use this beautiful place? Don't just make it somewhere that the D.C. elitists get to walk around on their weekends or only the tourists get to converge on. He's really celebrating Washington, D.C. He's making it better. He's cleaning it up. He may add another monument, the Triumphal Arch he's talking about adding by the end of his term. Those things really give you a good representation of the United States of America. When people come here, whether they're from within the country or outside, you want them to walk into the nation's capital, the greatest nation on earth, and see these beautiful monuments that are kind of timeless. And when they get run down, it's pretty disappointing. The fact that the president amidst all the other things on his plate, has the time to keep an eye on these things. It's good. It's a good thing for the spirit of the country, I think. And look, Democrats are complaining about all these doing, but the moment another Democrat president, God forbid anytime soon, but if we ever get another Democrat president, I can guarantee you they will not be tearing down the White House ballroom. They will not be undoing what he's done with the reflecting pool. They're not going to rip down another arch, because it really is universally positive for every American out there who's either in office or not. So really what the article touches on is just how he was able to really bring that spirit back in quick time right before the 4th of July in 2026 this year. He really only had a year and a half to do it, and just not only using the backdrop of DC, but even attending sporting events, the NBA Finals, the Super Bowl, some of the NCAA wrestling championships. That really shows when a president is there, regardless of who the president is. Certainly this one brings a lot more to the table, but any president being in the arena for any of these big events, it's a big deal. It draws more attention to areas of culture. I mean, I'm sure if you were ever playing a sport and the president of the United States was there, you'd, number one, be happy to have him in attendance, but number two, having that attention and recognition on something that you're passionate about for the athletes, that's great as well. So I think the president really making sure that he's celebrating what America's culture really is, and not like the last 4 years where the Biden-Harris administration tried to recreate what our culture is, and it's this hateful, racist place, and now we're going to fix it and tell you what it's really about. That was really the fraud. What President Trump's doing and the efforts he's taking this term to celebrate what American culture has been about for 250 years is really important. So that's kind of the high view of what the article is about. And as always, anytime the president shares any of your work, it's a tremendous honor.
Yeah, no, that was great to see that on Truth Social. And on top of that, you look at the National Guard there in Washington, D.C. to make D.C. safe again as well. So it's great to see that from the beautification standpoint and the safety aspect. And before I let you go, Matt, thanks again for spending time with us. The midterm national convention. This is something that I don't think has ever happened in the history of our country. Usually it's a presidential cycle, as you know. So September 9th and 10th, Dallas, Texas, the RNC has this midterm convention. I mean, surrounding that momentum, that might be a great thing going into the November elections too, right?
Absolutely. I think anytime the president's been on the ballot, it's natural, any president, but specifically this president, anytime he's on the ballot, turnout is much higher. And in the first midterm election, it's really tough for any president to continue to sweep all these elections and maintain full power. But I think what Chief of Staff Susie Wiles put out in January of this year was that he's really going to treat the home stretch of this election cycle as if it were 2024 again, or a general election. And you're absolutely right. You need that momentum, because when a party's in power and they have both chambers, there's just that natural malaise, right? I mean, I think at the end of the Biden administration, you would see that every single person who even slightly supports the president, President Trump, that is, made sure to get out to vote. And once you're in power, I think it's just a little bit of human nature to become a little bit complacent. I think he's doing everything he can to not allow that to happen, to make his second half of the term. It will never be a lame duck with this president, because he's always so thinking outside the box to get things done. But it certainly makes it tougher when you have to resist the Democrat Congress, who knows they could always attempt to impeach him again, which, again, not that he'd ever be convicted, but it just creates this cloud and this baggage that you have to fight through. So the convention's a great idea, one of a kind, definitely reserved for general election years, but the president's proving what's really stopping any party from creating their own. There'll certainly be enthusiasm there. I'm sure he'll be there. And you need that too. In addition to, if the Save America Act gets passed, depending on what we see tonight, that will motivate people too. So you mentioned the timing at the top of the hour when we started this show. The timing of all these things coming together right now, we're getting into the middle of the summer now. We're talking about trying to pass the Save America Act, whatever revelations we find out tonight. It's pretty clear that the president is dead serious about retaining both chambers of Congress. And I think, again, as I said, that's really should be the goal of every president. Historically, they lose one or both, but the president really mitigated some losses in his first term. He had probably the best midterm election of any first-term president who had both chambers of Congress. Yes, we lost the House, but by significantly smaller margins than other presidents had. So who knows where that'll go this year. I think he's got pretty much as good a shot as any incumbent to retain, but a lot of work needs to be done before then, and clearly the president's aware of that too. So he's not taking any chances.
Definitely, and looking forward to seeing some momentum on Capitol Hill for the Save America Act as well. RSBN host, writer, and former assistant press secretary at DHS under President Trump, Matt Cain. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.
Definitely, you too. Good stuff there with Matt Cain. It was great to see his coverage on RSBN as well, with Megan Kohler, Robert McNeely, a number of people here in RSBN. We're talking about D.C., Mount Rushmore, all the places out there. Great to see that coverage here on Right Side. And more than 1 million viewers on July 3rd, July 4th. And those numbers continue to grow, especially for nights like this. This is a national address by President Donald J. Trump. And there are a few networks that are saying, nah, we're not going to cover it. We'll talk about that a little bit later, again, here on the network, as many are joining us right now as we get ready for that 9 o'clock national primetime address. Let's go to some of our sponsors here on right side. The first one is All Family Pharmacy. You see it right there. Specifically, being prepared can make all the difference when it comes to your family's health care, whether you need an everyday prescription, a medication for common illness, or simply want to keep your medicine cabinet stocked. It's always better to plan ahead. That's why we recommend All Family Pharmacy. They offer more than 400 medications, from maintenance medications and antibiotics to ivermectin, GLP-1 therapies, NAD+, and other wellness options. What really sets them apart is their customer service. So when you call, you get a real person who can actually help. Whether you're placing an order, have questions about your prescription, or need guidance through the process, their team is there for you. So you can also speak with a licensed pharmacist if you have medication questions. So ordering is simple. Complete a secure online medical questionnaire, and one of their licensed physicians reviews your information and, if appropriate, writes your prescription. Your medication is then shipped directly to your door. So visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN10 promo code at checkout. Get that 10% off, and you have that number there, 561-717-6794. Let's go to Birch Gold Group as well. We wouldn't be celebrating America 250 if it wasn't for a strong foundation set by our framers. Alexander Hamilton built America's financial foundation on the principle of sound, stable money, and a principle that was really later embodied by the gold standard. Of course, we abandoned that discipline in 1971 and have since seen inflation slowly erode the dollar's value. So what is the foundation of your savings? Is it gold, or something that can be shaken, disrupted, or devalued? Birch Gold Group has been helping Americans solidify their savings with gold for the past 15 years. They'll help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. So learn how gold fits into your portfolio by texting the word Trump to the number 989898. You'll receive a free, no-obligation info kit. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, let Birch Gold help you build your foundation with gold. Text that word Trump to the number 989898. All right, it's 8:15 Eastern Time. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks so much for live streaming in here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. A few extra viewers, I'm sure, tonight. If you were trying to watch on some of the other networks, whenever, special report, President Trump, they're not doing that tonight. My director tells me Celebrity Family Feud is airing on one of the networks tonight instead of the president's speech about election integrity for our country. That's really what, we see out there with the mainstream media. And I wonder what cable news outlets will be airing this as well, or maybe not airing it. I still think, actually, I brought this up with Troy Miller, the National Religious Broadcasters president. I think we'll go to that interview next, actually. So let's just do that right now. Let's go to Troy Miller. You'll hear the point that I was just about to make. Let's go to him right now.
Thanks for having me today.
Definitely. Let's talk about tonight. I mean, the press, they can't even gather a good question there. They're all concerned. Don't talk about the election. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of perplexing a little bit of a press who's supposed to be about, getting to the bottom of things and to informing the public of why you don't want to talk about the election or election integrity. And look, as Christians, I can tell you, Christians understand that the government institutes are about protecting people. They're about seeing that the good laws are put in place and those are executed. So we care about the government, and we should all care about the integrity of our elections that puts those officials in place.
You and I both are media types, right? You're in radio, you do some TV stuff, obviously, today. Tonight, there were some people that said that the networks might not show the president's speech. I think they will. And what I think will happen tonight, Troy, is they'll go to the president's speech, but once he starts talking about the 2020 election, it'll pull back from the speech, it'll go to the anchor, and the anchor will say, well, those claims are not verified. I think at least one network will do that, whether it's cable or whether it's the network news. Do you agree, or do you think they're all going to cover this speech tonight?
Well, I think you could possibly be right because and look, I'll say this about the mainstream media. The mainstream media is not journalist anymore. These are, basically propaganda houses that push agendas and push ideologies onto the American public. So if they hold to their journalistic integrity, then they'll hear the president through. If they do what they've been doing, then you're probably right. They're going to cut away and go to their propaganda.
Exactly. They'll have their whole 7,000 people sitting there around the desk like MS Now. I mean, how many talking heads do you need to tell us that the 2020 election, Joe Biden won it? And, come on, he didn't win the election. We know. Let's not even get into all that right now. But let's shift over to one more story before we let you go. Thanks again for joining us here on Right Side. The Hill is reporting that Congress should back Trump's push to keep AM radio in cars. And I'm sure the late, great Rush Limbaugh would be very happy about this one.
Well, yes, he would. And so would 85 other million Americans who tune in to AM radio on a regular basis, many of which tune in to listen to conservative talk and Christian talk and teach. Number one format to getting into especially rural communities across America. And look, it's about more than AM radio. This is about radio in general and consumer choice, that the consumer, the driver of the car, the owner of the car is going to have the choice for free over-the-air access to the content they want, or they're going to be driven by the auto manufacturers who are going to control the digital dash. So this fight is really a consumer fight.
It is. So we'll see how that transpires. Let's go to one more quick question, way off topic. Daylight saving time. Do you think that, we see that the House already passed this measure, the Senate may, and then if that happens, President Trump signs it into law. That means no more 5 p.m. winter dark driving rush hour up there in the Northeast.
Well, look, there's winners and losers here with the daylight savings time. It's going to hurt AM radio's morning drive time because there's restrictions on the power limits that AM radio could do during dark hours versus light hours. A lot of people don't know that. But it's also going to mean that in today's society, which isn't exactly as safe as it used to be, we're going to have a lot of kids standing in the dark waiting for school buses during certain times of the year here. So there's trade-offs on both sides of this. Again, it's an issue. I don't know why Congress is taking this one up. Let me go back to AM radio. 350 co-sponsors. It's the most bipartisan bill in the Congress right now. It's over 60 in the Senate. It's bulletproof. Let's get the AM radio bill passed and worry about daylight savings time sometime down the road.
And then on top of that, the Save America Act. It would be great to see that passed. Your thoughts?
Everybody should care about election integrity. It's everybody. It's not a partisan issue. Look at the poll numbers. 85% of Americans care about this issue. Let's make our voting system, our democracy, let's put the trust back into it, restore the trust into it, pass the SAVE Act. Again, one of the most bipartisan supported bills in the country.
We'll see what happens. Thank you so much, Troy Miller, the president of the National Religious Broadcasters. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that interview, of course, earlier today, if you caught up with our White House press briefing coverage as Carolyn Levitt got back to that podium, great to see that as we are getting ready for President Trump's national address tonight, the primetime address here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're seeing some interesting posts out there from various United States senators talking about tonight. We're going to get to that in just a second. Let's go to some of our sponsors in the meantime. One of them is Free USA Dog Gift. You see it right there. I want to take a minute to talk to all the parents watching tonight. It's officially the dog days of summer, and if your house is anything like ours used to be, that means the dog sprawls out on the coolest tile floor he can find, refusing to move for anyone. It seems our dogs tend to run the house, and honestly, we wouldn't have it any other way. Well, here's a fun fact. Our founding fathers were the exact same way. Turns out long before they were founding a nation, they were the original dog people. Tails wagging in the halls of Mount Vernon and Monticello, muddy paw prints on important documents. Our founders love their dogs every bit as much as we love ours today. And with America's 250th birthday, what better way to get kids excited about history than through the goofy, loyal, tail-wagging companions who were there for it all. Our friends at the Kids Guide have put together a great guide called The Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends, giving kids a fun and heartwarming look at the dogs who stood and sat and probably begged for scraps besides our nation's founders. It's the perfect keepsake souvenir for kids, and they're giving away for free at freeusadoggift.com. Plus, when you request your copy, they're also giving you a second free guide called The Kids Guide to the Founder's Message for Today, a must-read for every child. So, during these dog days of summer, head on over to freeusadoggift.com right now to get these free guides for you and your family and help celebrate America's 250th birthday the right way. Let's go to our next sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. You see Cove Pure right there. You know, most of us know there's chlorine in our tap water. Gross, right? We smell it sometimes, maybe shrug, then just drink it anyway, because we've been told it's what keeps our water safe. But what they don't tell you is what chlorine becomes after it's added to your water, and that's why it's so important to filter your water through Cove Pure. You know, chlorine itself isn't even the biggest problem. Chlorine levels in your water are regulated, but what's not regulated is chemicals that form when chlorine reacts with naturally occurring organic matter from rivers, soil, and plant matter. So we're told when chlorine interacts with those particles, it creates chemical byproducts called THMs, and the government itself calls THMs probable human carcinogens, and they've been linked to disruption of your gut and cancer. So those pitcher filters you get at the store, they won't fix this. They improve the taste of chlorine, but THMs require something far more powerful, and that's exactly what Cove Pure is. Their Clearwave reverse osmosis technology is actually certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants. So it's not just chlorine or THMs. There's fluoride or PFAs and pharmaceuticals. So if it isn't water, Cove Pure removes it. And this thing doesn't just, it doesn't take up much room at all. You can see it on screen there. It fits perfectly on the counter. You don't have to call someone in to install it, anything like that. Just plug it in and there you go. You got some good stuff right there. Now, also, you can choose whatever temperature water you want, hot, cold, or warm with a tap of a button. No more waiting for the kettle to boil to make a cup of tea or coffee. Just tap that button and you get hot, cold, or warm water instantly. And the feedback on Cove Pure from our viewers has been incredible, and people have told us that they could literally taste the difference. Clean water is one of the best investments you can make for you and your family's health. And right now, they're giving RSBN viewers $250 off if you use the link covepure.com/RSBN. Again, covepure.com/RSBN. Drink pure, live pure, Cove Pure. Great sponsors here on Right Side. We may have clip number 8 ready, but I'm going to read this to you. Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt posted this within the hour. Quote, "Some of the facts that will be revealed in President Trump's speech tonight are truly shocking. If the networks were truly serving the public interest, they would air it, and as a country, we would collectively resolve to take action." There it is. That's Eric Schmidt, the senator from Missouri. Let's read it again one more time for those of you just joining us. Some of the facts that will be revealed in President Trump's speech tonight are truly shocking. If the networks were truly serving the public interest, they would air it, and as a country, we would collectively resolve to take action. So that's the senator, again, of Missouri posting that about literally 40 minutes ago here on X. That we just checked that right now. So let's do this. We have a couple interviews to get to. Some of our great sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. After some of these great interviews, we'll get back right into awaiting, of course, President Trump in about 33 minutes from now. Once again, this is RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks so much for live streaming in or watching on replay, maybe later tonight or tomorrow. Let's go now to Birch Gold Group. This is Philip Patrick. We caught up with him recently. Check it out. And joining us now is Philip Patrick with Birch Gold Group. Philip, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Matthew.
Definitely. So the ceasefire with Iran, of course, is over, and President Trump says the U.S. will again blockade Iranian shipping while charging for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. So what does this mean economically?
Look, I think it's more volatility. President Trump's absolutely right when it comes to the underlying principle. We cannot have the Iranians holding one of the most important trade routes in the world hostage. This isn't just a US problem. This is a problem for the entire global economy. And I share President Trump's thoughts that, our European allies should really be assisting here. Charging 20% on cargo moving through the strait, though, would add costs to shipping, would drive the price of shipping up, shipping costs up, and ultimately fuel inflation here domestically. So I'm not sure if this is something he's seriously considering or whether this was just sort of a nudge to our European friends, like, come and help, otherwise we're going to start charging. But either way, it's more volatility for the economy. This sort of stop-start nature of the campaign is really problematic. We saw crude oil coming down, inflation getting under control. Now I think we expect another spike as prices increase.
Yeah, we'll see how President Trump, works the deal, works the negotiations, works the angles there. Now, that brings us to artificial intelligence. AI is supposed to make us more productive and bring costs down, but why is it raising prices and becoming more difficult to finance first?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I believe in the long-term productivity of AI. I think it's real, but it's all about sequence here, right? We may eventually receive cheaper services and greater efficiency, but before that happens, there is a colossal amount of investment that has to go in, right? We have to build data centers, we need chips, we need electricity to generate these large farms. And, there's a huge amount of expense that goes into that. If we just look at the four major technology companies, they're expected to spend about $720 billion this year just on AI infrastructure. That is a colossal amount of investment. On top of that, we're seeing costs increase. Some are saying the costs on chips necessary for this could increase by 400% by the end of this year. So this is really a timing thing. By the way, you have the financing angle as well. A lot of these large companies took on debt in order to fund infrastructure. And of course, with debt costs increasing, it's putting more of a squeeze. So this is really a race for these companies to get profitable before this expense starts to cause a major drag.
There seems to be a lot of things going on financially in the global markets around the world, as we're talking about right now. And then back here in the States, we're seeing that the Fed might raise interest rates. So why should the Fed raise rates when families are already struggling to pay for groceries?
It's a great question. Listen, the Fed are, they have very limited tools, right? The Fed are basically just a blunt instrument. They can make credit cheaper or more expensive, and, they've got their hands tied. I think Waller initially was suggesting that, inflation was coming down, that should give the Fed some space to lower rates. But obviously with the uptick that we saw very recently in crude oil, the surge that we saw in inflation up until recently, it puts the Fed in a very tough position. So the reality is this is going to be tough for American families, right? President Trump is doing what he can. He inherited an absolute disaster from the Biden administration. So we're trying to work through. American families are certainly feeling the squeeze. But, like I said, the Fed has a dual mandate, right? And if inflation looks like it's going up and it's out of control, they need to raise rates. I don't see it happening this year for whatever it's worth, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes in 2027. Let's go from the States across the pond to Europe, where the IMF has warned that Europe could be headed toward a quote-unquote explosive debt path. Is that a warning for us back here in the States?
Look, it certainly should be, and it's a little bit welcome as well. We know how bad our debt situation here is in the United States, but it's clearly not just a U.S. issue. This is broadly a Western problem. Look, I don't think Europe's going to collapse tomorrow, obviously, but the trajectory is certainly concerning. The IMF says that under current policies, European government debt's going to reach 130% of GDP by 2040. That's 40% above the IMF's own benchmark for sustainability. So, it's a very, very, very tough position that Europe finds himself in, and we find ourselves in here in the United States. The reality is, if we're still running massive deficits, we have debt to GDP over 110%, it's just not sustainable longer term. And we're seeing what's happening domestically with debt service, same problems rippling across Europe as well.
So we see the people watching Right Side Broadcasting Network, and they hear me talking about Birch Gold Group, and they might look at their checking account and say, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Then they have maybe a savings account, and then there are people that have the retirement savings accounts. So can you talk to us about what that looks like, the whole process with diversifying and Birch Gold and all of that?
Of course, yeah, people have wealth in different areas, right? Some people were self-employed and managed to build cash positions. Other people, like myself, had employers and built 401ks and IRAs. So our exposure varies depending on the situation. We can help people purchase physical precious metals, no matter which asset, whether they're working with cash or through an IRA. For those who buy in cash, we can structure a portfolio of physical precious metals. We can ship them to them directly. They can hold on to them, or we can have them stored within, let's say, a Brinks facility. As you rightly point out, a lot of people have IRAs and 401ks. Under US law, we can roll over any portion of qualifying 401ks or IRAs. So it's not an all or nothing thing. People can take a portion. We can place physical precious metals tax deferred within the retirement account structure. And in climates like this, we've talked a lot about inflation, debt, deficit. These are all drivers for gold and silver. It's why central banks are still setting records and why I think they're important for individuals as well.
On top of that, gold these days are what, north of $4,000 a troy ounce. Back in the day, it was $1,200 10 years ago. And that's the question we ask our viewers. What's it going to be like over the course of the next few years, 5 years, 10 years? So it looks like this is something that really can anchor you financially.
It's exactly correct. Listen, gold is a commodity, right? And it's a commodity like others, like wheat and pork bellies. Over longer periods of time, they always go up. Gold and silver, precious metals in general, they're being driven more aggressively than we're used to in the current climate. And it's because of massive money printing, currency devaluation, and inflation, right? Central banks, they've been holding government debt, right? And they're looking at it and saying, hey, the US government's printing money. Inflation is going to erode the buying power of these reserves, and they're dumping dollars and buying gold. And central bankers are just like us, right? We're not traders. We're not trying to make a quick buck, buy and sell every day. Neither are they. They position themselves for long term, and their job is to secure national reserves, just like our job is to secure our retirement. So, yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and if there's somebody watching right now that says, all right, I have a decent retirement savings, I do want to have a portion of that into gold, precious metals. The process with you guys is great because you could talk to somebody on the phone. It doesn't have to be all online, correct?
No, listen, our job, a big part of what we do is education, right? It's why we have a lot of written information, we have a lot of guides, and there's a lot of people like myself that are here to walk people through the process, hold their hands, explain everything, make sure everything's well understood. And if the customer at that point is comfortable and happy and ready to move forward, we can facilitate all of the paperwork, all of the steps. So what I tell customers is, look, you need to work on your own comfort level, make sure you understand everything, and this makes sense. Once you're there, we can really handle everything else.
That's always good to see. All you have to do is text Trump to that number, 989898. You get that free info kit with no obligation. Great stuff there. Philip Patrick with Birch Gold Group. Philip, thank you again for your friendship here at Right Side.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. All right, we are getting closer and closer to that 9 o'clock national primetime address right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. For those of you just joining us, this is RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks so much for live streaming in from coast to coast right now, live on this network. Again, in about 24 minutes or so, we will go to President Trump. This is one of those speeches that I don't think is going to be that hour delay as we got used to that at RSBN. Of course, all those rallies we've covered over the years, there would be sometimes a delay. Tonight, probably not that way. And now let's go to some of our sponsors. All Family Pharmacy here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We'll get back into some more of the 24/7 news cycle. Now, being prepared can make all the difference when it comes to your family's health care. Whether you need an everyday prescription, a medication for a common illness, or simply want to keep your medicine cabinet stocked, it's always better to plan ahead. And that's why we recommend All Family Pharmacy. They offer more than 400 medications, from maintenance medications and antibiotics to ivermectin, GLP-1 therapies, NAD plus, and other wellness options. And what really sets them apart is their customer service, because when you call, you actually get a real person to help. Whether you're placing an order, have questions about your prescription, or need guidance through the process, their team is there for you. You can even speak with a licensed pharmacist if you need to, if you have some medication questions. So ordering is simple. All you do is complete a secure online medical questionnaire. One of their licensed physicians reviews your information and, if appropriate, writes your prescription. Your medication is then shipped directly to your door. So just visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use the RSBN 10 promo code at checkout. Get that 10% off. And if you'd like to give them a call, 561-717-6794 is the phone number. All right, let's go to one more sponsor here on Right Side, freeusadoggift.com. I want to take a minute to speak to the parents watching today. It's officially, of course, the Dog Days of Summer. And here's a fun fact. Our founding fathers turned out, long before they were founding a nation, they were the original dog people. Tails wagging in the halls of Mount Vernon and Monticello, muddy paw prints on the important documents. Our founders love their dogs every bit as much as we love ours. And with America's 250th birthday, what better way to get kids excited about history than through the goofy, loyal, tail-wagging companions who were there for it all? Our friends at the Kids Guide have put together a great guide called The Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends, giving kids a fun and heartwarming look at the dogs who stood and sat and probably begged for scraps beside our nation's founders. It's the perfect keepsake souvenir for kids, and they're giving it away for free at freeusadoggift.com. Plus, when you request your copy, they're also giving you a second free guide called The Kids Guide to the Founder's Message for Today, a must-read for every child. So, during these Dog Days of Summer, head on over to freeusadoggift.com, and you'll get these free guides for your family and help celebrate America's 250th birthday the right way. All right, we're getting closer, 21 minutes out from the top of the hour. Of course, tonight, in front of the nation, President Trump delivers that primetime address from the East Room of the White House. Earlier today, Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said tonight's presidential announcement is all about protecting the integrity of our elections. This, as the mainstream media pushes a false narrative against truth, evidence, and receipts. Let's go back to Carolyn Leavitt one more time, fielding that question from the fake news earlier today in clip number 1.
I would encourage everyone to tune in tonight. I've seen a lot of reporting and frankly misreporting about what the president will say. I think the American people will be relieved to hear what they are hearing from the president of the United States and his commitment to transparency and the focus on the integrity of our elections tonight. I think all Republicans and Democrats should recognize this should be a nonpartisan issue. If we don't have safe and secure elections in our country, we cannot have a country. It is a vital part of our democracy, of our constitutional republic. The president will be speaking about that tonight. And in addition, at the very same time, of course, he is working on all of these economic issues that the American people have at home. I just read to you the latest inflation numbers are looking good, the best report in 6 years. The president, Republicans and Democrats and all Americans have this president to thank for the largest tax cuts in American history, which every Democrat on Capitol Hill voted against. You have this president to thank for the Trump accounts for our children and securing the future of the American dream. So this president is doing a lot, but obviously safe and secure elections are a true tenet of our constitutional republic, and the president will be speaking about that tonight. Well, first of all, Garrett, I think part of the problem is that the media has refused to acknowledge that tens of millions of Americans across the country share the concerns of this president about the sanctity of our elections. And your premise of your question, you're jumping ahead to a conclusion in this speech before even hearing it yourself. I think that everyone should tune in tonight, including the people in this room, and you should report on the president's speech and the findings that he is going to reveal in this speech with a little bit of honesty and a little bit of integrity, because it will shock you if you have an honest eye listening to the president tonight, and everything he is saying will be backed by facts and by evidence that will be provided this evening. And again, Garrett, I think all Americans, Democrat, Republican, should agree that we are the greatest country in the history of the world. We should have the safest and most secure elections in the history of the world. And what the president will be speaking about tonight will show you that perhaps that is not the case, and we need to make some adjustments moving forward, including the Save America Act, as Rachel pointed out, is a key legislative priority for this president on Capitol Hill, and he wants to see all senators and members of Congress voting in favor of the Save America Act, because it's crucially important as we move forward.
All right, so of course, Carolyn Levitt speaking at the press briefing earlier today. And to her point, Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt posting this within the hour. Some of the facts that will be revealed in President Trump's speech tonight are truly shocking, saying, quote, if the networks were truly serving the public interest, they would air it. And as a country, we would collectively resolve to take action. Let's go now to the Mountaineer State. Joining us now is West Virginia State Senator Chris Rose. Chris, thanks so much for joining us here on Right Side.
Thank you for having me again, Matt. Always a pleasure to be on.
Definitely. Let's talk about it straight up. The Save America Act. Don't they need to have some more momentum on Capitol Hill? I'm sure if you were there, you'd be saying, come on, guys, let's get this going.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation in our lifetime, in our era here of America. And without it, I think we're in great trouble as a country. I mean, look, there's a reason why the left is celebrating the Supreme Court ruling on birthright citizenship that allowed the anchor baby loophole to continue, because illegal immigrants have been voting in our elections in a lot of these liberal states. And the Save America Act is the only way, without changing the Constitution after that ruling, to fix that. And for the people in the U.S. Senate, I got to call a spade a spade. My U.S. Senate counterparts are dropping the ball, and they're missing a golden opportunity to restore faith in the elections in this republic.
Your thoughts about some of the networks saying, we're not going to let the people that do watch our networks, we're not going to show President Trump's speech.
Really? They're not going to show the speech tonight?
Yeah, there's two networks that we know of right now, NBC and ABC, that are they're not going to show the speech tonight. There may be some networks that show a little bit of the speech, and then once President Trump starts talking about 2020, I'm sure they're going to pull back from that too.
My thought of that is this is the exact same, we call it the fake news media, the liberal media bias that we've been experiencing since President Trump took the escalator ride down in 2015. This man has sacrificed his personal wealth and his golden years of his life to try to save this country, to put the Republican Party back on course, to put America back on track and make this country great again. And the media is nothing but bought and paid for extension of the Democrat National Convention, the DNC, the Democrat National Committee. And it's pathetic to see. You got a president who has been the greatest president of our lifetime, arguably one of the greatest one in American history, who has got inflation under control, has unleashed American energy, bringing jobs back overseas, secured our borders, made our country safer than it's been in a very long time. And you have a liberal news media that's out to destroy this man. And that is pathetic. And quite frankly, it's just belittling of the news media to do that to the sitting president of the United States. Because if it had been somebody other than Donald Trump, they all would have been covering it, and it's an embarrassment to this country that our news media, who's supposed to be the watchdog of society, is now bought and paid for by the Democrat Party.
Enter the solution. Thank God for conservative media, of course. Chris Rose, of course, the West Virginia State Senator. Thank you so much for joining us here on Right Side. One more question, though. We always talk about God, family, country, freedom here on this network. Isn't that what it's about? Isn't this what this is all about? It's good versus evil, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's exactly the way to summarize the Save America Act. It is good versus evil. It is those who want the American people to be the ones who duly elect the leaders of this country versus those who want to bring in socialism and communism and evil. So that is truly what this is. It is no longer, as Reagan would say, it's no longer a Democrat versus a Republican issue. It is literally an up and a down. And you can go up with the MAGA Republicans and pass the Save America Act, or this country can go down in flames with the Democrats, their socialist policies, and their open borders.
West Virginia State Senator Chris Rose, thanks again for your friendship to the network. We'll talk to you later, Chris. Thank you again.
Thank you, my friend. God bless.
You too. God bless you, sir. It's great to see the Mountaineer State, of course, that state and Oklahoma, all counties in both states, going towards President Trump in 2024. And let's talk about 2020 quickly. You look at 2016, the swing states go to President Trump. 2024, the 7 or 8 swing states, they go to President Trump. And all of those swing states somehow in 2020 didn't go to President Trump. We saw the pandemic happen with COVID. We know that was the playbook there. And we have the evidence and receipts that we've been talking about here at the network, we've been seeing on social media, and now in front of the country, and in some cases across the globe, the president's going to have evidence and receipts tonight that he's going to share with the American people. And no wonder the media is saying, we don't want to cover that. We don't want to cover the election stuff. We know that's the fake news. We get it. So again, the solution to all of it, conservative media, people that are we the people that love God, family, country, and freedom. We resonate with you guys out there. And it's not just RSBN. There's people on social media, there's other networks, all the things, I get it. But we're on the right side of history, and we love this nation, and we want the freedom to continue. We don't want to see what happened the other day in Fort Worth, Texas, where this police chief had to apologize because a number of officers were saying, your speech is offensive, and if it offends somebody, you're going to get written up for disorderly conduct. This is an actual story that I saw on Libs of TikTok. We talked about it earlier in the week. So if you get a chance, join us tomorrow here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and join us next week as we continue to cover the 24/7 news cycle from the lens, the perspective of the mass majority of the United States of America. The leftists, they sound like there's a lot of them out there. It's a lot of paid protesters, a lot of news networks on the wrong side of history, acting like there's a whole swath of these people. There's people out there, but we are the massive majority. It's the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's common sense. All right, let's go to some sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, Kalshi.com/RSBN. What will President Trump say tonight at the address? You'll be able to hear it right there on Kalshi.com/RSBN when it comes to the various polls that are out there. So check it out. You can go to the QR code. You can download the app if you'd like. You've got a few ways to get to that great site, Kalshi.com/RSBN. Let's go to one more sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and that is coming up in 3, 2. Oh, just keep going on Kalshi? Okay. We're going to keep going to the next thing then. Let's go to All Family Pharmacy, actually. We had an interview with Michael Kunzler. As soon as that interview wraps up, we'll get back into it as we are getting close to hearing from President Donald J. Trump, the 47th Commander-in-Chief of these United States.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Let's go right out when it comes to that 24/7 news cycle and talk about this parasite bacteria that is spreading out there, causing all sorts of symptoms. Can you talk to us about that, maybe what it's called? I don't even know how to pronounce it, to be honest with you. But what's going on out there?
I believe it's Cyclospora, and it's a small parasite that's causing, as they're saying, explosive diarrhea, which is causing discomfort in the stomach. And, there are a couple different options. One that people don't really think about, but is an everyday antibiotic that most women may have in their cabinet already, especially those who are a patient of ours, and it's Bactrim DS. That's the double-strength Bactrim. It's a combination of 2 different medications, and I believe it's a 10-day cycle. It's 1 tablet twice daily, traditionally prescribed by our physicians. It's something to have in the cabinet for it, as well as a anti-parasite. Any of the bendazoles will work: triclobendazole, albendazole, mebendazole. A lot of those have been known useful for this as well. So there are a couple different ways about being prepared for something like this. And, it sounds like it started in Taco Bell, which the irony of that, right, with the quality of meats that Taco Bell has been providing for the past decade or two. Now we're diving into a parasite infection in our lettuce and other produce, which is kind of scary because a lot of people eat that on a daily basis. It's something that we believe, or we're thought to believe, was healthy and good to eat for breakfast or lunch and dinner. So now we're suggesting to have one of those treatments on hand, just in case, right? And just always be prepared, because what happens if you get it and you don't have one of these medications ready to go? You're in discomfort for a couple of days, and it's not something that we want you to be in.
It's so wild to watch the various health news, breaking news, developing news out there, whether it's in this country or around the world. For you guys, you must have, jokingly in a way, a situation room of sorts to discuss. Okay, we see something in Europe, we see something in Africa, we see something in the States, and then you guys can alter and say, hey, well, we have this to help the people for that. I mean, is that simply what you guys do sometimes?
Ultimately, yeah. We sit down with a group of pharmacists. We have a conversation with them. We go over what is best needed for the situation that we're looking at. And then we report back to our physicians, right? And then we provide the information our pharmacists suggested as well as what the physicians are suggesting. Usually both will match up at the end of the day. We'll create a protocol based on how our physicians are going to recommend it. It'll get approved by our pharmacists, and then we'll add it to the website. We'll add it to a newsletter. We'll go on a broadcast and talk about it, how we can help you in those ways being prepared, right? Because, the last thing you want to be is unprepared for a situation like this, especially when it comes to a parasite infection. It's not something that's comfortable. It is very frustrating to have. And to be honest, even if you just went with the Bactrim DS, it's a very cheap drug. We sell the generic version of it. However, we use the brand name drug because there's more awareness to the name of that drug. $25. It's a 10-day supply. It comes in a tablet or a liquid. It's based on preference, what you prefer, whether you like a tablet or whether you like a liquid. And then I believe there is an allergy to sulfur. We have other medications that we can then suggest based on the physician's recommendation or the pharmacist's recommendation.
So we have all of that. When we look at more than 400 prescriptions that you guys have at All Family Pharmacy, ivermectin obviously is one of the big sellers. I was actually on X the other day, and I see people that are great patriots out there still doing reporting about ivermectin. Why do you think the establishment medicine industry, for lack of a better way to describe it, is against something like the power punch of ivermectin?
I believe it's all political nonsense at the end of the day. I mean, it started that way and it's going to end that way. It's just going to be a battle over that. I mean, I was having a conversation earlier with the owner of a gym, and we were talking about, what our services are provided and why I only talk to conservatives about it, because we believe the conservatives have an open mind and they want to have a conversation. They want to try medication. They don't want to try vaccines. They don't want to go through these treatments that destroy their body. They want to try something that could help them now, not something that's going to cost thousands of dollars and going to hurt themselves doing it in the long term. And so we believe that, the other side of the table also has an open mind as well. But we believe that because President Trump was behind hydroxychloroquine or even ivermectin, and that Robert K. Jr., RFK Jr. is behind this as well, we believe that they're just not going to listen to it because of a political belief. But at the end of the day, you would be surprised, right? A lot of people have an open mind. They're welcoming when they come to the table to have a conversation about it. And so I think ultimately, some people just lean either way because of that. And it really does suck to see that side of it, because we think all people should have an open mind, and we think politics do not deserve to be in medicine. It's just going to hurt the world and not help it. And unfortunately, with Big Pharma and the politics that they control, it's always going to be in medicine, no matter what. And that's why companies like us exist, to provide medical freedom to the Americans across the United States, whether you're in Florida, whether you're in Minnesota, you're in New Mexico, California, Washington, any liberal or I should say conservative state. We're going to provide those same benefits to you because you deserve it as an American, not because you're a Republican and not because you're a Democrat.
And that's what it seems like. The people that come to All Family Pharmacy are no nonsense Americans, aren't they? They're not going to put up with the crap, are they, Michael?
No, they don't want to either, right? They just want pricing transparency. They want access, and they just want to be prepared. They don't want politics inside of their medicine. They just want to be prepared. They just want a safe, secure transaction. They just want it to be convenient and easy to them. It shouldn't be this way in medicine. You should, as a mother or father and with children, you should have access to medications like this ahead of time. That way you're not scrambling at the last minute when you wake up and one of your kids is sick, whether they have the flu, a sinus infection, whatever the case may be, this new parasite infection. You should always be prepared. I'm not saying go out and stock your medicine cabinet with 100 different drugs, right? We should stay prepared based on what is going on in the current news, what is going on in the current world, or based on your lifestyle. That is all. It's very simple. There's only a couple medications you need. You don't need a fancy kit with 20 different antibiotics in it. You just need what is going to help you now.
Exactly. And then the thing that's great about you guys is instead of calling, one of the other pharmacies out there, the box stores, the traditional ones, where if you want to talk to a pharmacist, usually you call and then you have to leave a voicemail. They might return it within an hour. With you guys, I see that number 561-717-6794. You can actually just simply ask some questions. And I think that's really sets you guys apart is that customer service. And let's close with that.
Yeah. So what sets us apart is actually speaking to somebody here. You're actually, when you call that phone number, that is the phone number to the pharmacy. These are customer service technicians. These are customer service reps as well as pharmacy technicians. There are pharmacists here. We have doctors. They're not located in the pharmacy, as that is a big regulation that they cannot be located in the pharmacy. But we do have our physicians who are located throughout the United States that we can put you in touch with. Based on where you live, will be based on where they're licensed. So there are a lot of different ways, but when you call that phone number, it's a real person. It's a real American. They live a very similar story to you live. They understand what you're going through and what you're looking for, because we have pharmacists who train them that way. Now, a lot of our technicians can't give a lot of medical advice. However, we have pharmacists on staff that can help with that. They are 4 to 5 at all times. And on top of that, we have a bunch of different physicians who give us the guidance that we need as well.
Awesome. Great stuff. Michael Kunzler, the owner of All Family Pharmacy. Thank you for what you guys do for the American people. And thank you for your partnership here at Right Side.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely. Good evening once again, and welcome back into RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. In just a few minutes, in front of the nation, President Trump delivers a primetime address from the White House. Tonight's national address is a kickoff of sorts from the fact that we have the midterm election, which is just 3.5 months away. This, as the White House is saying tonight, defending America's election integrity is paramount, and that American elections are for American citizens. Again, earlier, Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt posting the following quote, saying, "Some of the facts that will be revealed in President Trump's speech tonight are truly shocking. If the networks were truly serving the public interest, they would air it, and as a country, we would collectively resolve to take action." So let's take a quick look at the Save America Act as we are awaiting President Trump any minute from now. Of course, it consists of voter ID, proof of citizenship, and no more mail-in ballots unless it's for military or medical or a few other instances. And the best way for it to pass right now is nuking the filibuster. We'll see what happens. There are a few on board with that, but we have to see some more momentum, of course, on Capitol Hill. And as we await that, we'll be covering it here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. We're live every day, Monday through Friday here, and even on the weekends if there's any breaking news out there. So thank you so much for live streaming in right now as we get ready to cover President Trump's speech. And guess who's not covering it? Some in the mainstream media are deciding, let's have some censorship today in the United States of America. Why are they so afraid to cover something that reveals truth, evidence, receipts, and facts? We know what happened in 2020. We know what happened in 2020. So we're going to hear from President Trump here shortly. Again, this is going to be, I'm hearing, maybe a speech that is lasting about 23 minutes, that per some sources. So we'll see as that happens here, as it's now 8 o'clock on the Central Time Zone, 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Thanks so much for watching from coast to coast, including the Mountain Time Zone, the Pacific Time Zone. We're getting ready now. As we saw earlier, Carolyn Leavitt back at that podium for the White House press briefing, which was pretty awesome to see her back after maternity leave, and obviously a rock star, the GOAT of press secretaries, handling the press today, especially the press that was so concerned about President Trump's speech tonight. It didn't even happen yet, and they were all concerned about it. Well, you can watch it right here, and you can watch it in conservative media and to the other networks that are actually airing it. So great to see that. And those of you watching on your phone, whether it's on X or Rumble or YouTube or the app, thank you so much for doing so. Pass this link around to your friends and family. And guess what? We'll be live here tomorrow as well, covering 24/7 news here at RSBN and into next week. We know that September 9th and 10th is the midterm RNC National Convention as well. So a lot going on in the upcoming few months into the midterm elections. And of course, we see the president meeting with various leaders at the White House as well, just like earlier this week with the Iraqi prime minister. So you can see it all pretty much here on RSBN. So thanks so much again for live streaming in. It's all about we the people. Let's go to President Trump.
Before we begin, I'm proud to report that our country is safer, stronger, and far wealthier than it has ever been before. We are doing great. Less than 2 years ago, we inherited an economic and social disaster. After the worst inflation in 48 years, the wide open borders with millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, including criminals of all types, and 11,888 murders, many of whom killed more than one person. We had transgender for everybody, men and women sports, crime ravaging our cities, and the whole world was laughing at us as a nation, but not anymore. 2 years ago, our country was dead. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. America is respected like we have never been respected before. We have more money being invested in the United States than at any time in the history of our country. More Americans are working today than ever before. This week it was announced that inflation saw the largest monthly decline in more than 6 years. Just happened. It was just given out. The media reported it, and we accept it. The best in 6 years. The tax cuts in our great, big, beautiful bill are saving hardworking families thousands and thousands of dollars, like with the provisions, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, along with the interest deduction on a loan used to purchase a car, but only if that car is made in America, and a 100% expensing for our job-creating businesses. Our stock markets are at their highest point in many years, but we can actually say of all time. And your 401ks, pensions, and retirement accounts are setting records every single day, the highest in history. For years, we paid the highest price for prescription drugs anywhere in the world. Now we pay the lowest price under my most favored nation's policy because I was able to get the rest of the world and the pharmaceutical companies to act responsibly. Drug prices are coming down by 70, 80, and 90%. TrumpRx.gov, this will ultimately reduce the cost of health care. You have to go to TrumpRx.gov and take advantage of it. But the cost of health care is coming way down because of what we've done with prescription drugs. And with Trump accounts, every child in America now has access to a tax-free investment account to save for their future. Billions and billions of dollars are being invested, put in by companies and individuals to take care of our children so that at age 18, they will have potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in their account, and they'll get off to a great start in life. So for that, go to TrumpAccounts.gov and sign up your child or any child who'd like to sign up. Our previously wide open borders have been transformed into the most secure borders in the history of our country, with 0 illegal aliens being admitted to the United States in the past 14 months. That is 0. Nobody thought it was possible. We had the worst border in the history of our country, and now we have the best. Crime is plummeting nationwide, with the murder rate at its lowest level since 1900, or more than 125 years ago. We're making a record investment in our armed forces, and we have the strongest and most powerful military by far anywhere in the world. I built it during my first term, and unfortunately, we're forced to use it now. We won in Venezuela, which is now working with us to produce millions and millions of barrels of oil. We are likewise winning big in Iran, and you will see the fruits of that labor very, very shortly. America is back and doing really well, but we still have a major challenge that must be urgently addressed, because no country can be great without fair and honest elections. You have to trust your country, because if there can be no trust, there can be no greatness. And that's very simple. No trust, no greatness. For many years, I've called for bold, swift, and decisive action to protect the integrity of America's elections. Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure, one where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard. Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure. This evidence shows that the election system we have dangerously exposes and really exposes like levels never thought possible to hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference. Just as disturbingly, this vital information has for many years been covered up and hidden from you, the American people, our beautiful, our great American people. But that all changes right now. The documents we will release starting tonight have been gathered by the White House Government Transparency Task Force, a great group of people, along with the staff of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, supported by our top intelligence agency chiefs, who have all personally reviewed the findings we are presenting this evening and fully confirmed their authenticity. You can see these documents for yourself at whitehouse.gov. That's whitehouse.gov. Go check it out. Our purpose in disclosing this information is not to weaken confidence in election, but to earn that confidence by confronting vulnerabilities and correcting them very, very quickly, and that's what we're doing. The documents cover 5 major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project. Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, in many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling, covering it up from both the president and the American people like nobody thought was possible. U.S. spy agencies began learning about the compromise of voter registration files in 2020 when they discovered that tens of millions of voter data, think of that, tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China. Yet those responsible for sounding the alarm instead kept the information secret and hidden. They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country, a standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say. The cover-up of this colossal security breach is even more disturbing in light of the additional information showing that China engaged in other election-related activities to undermine my first administration and our 2020 campaign. They did not want, and they just didn't want it. They fought like hell not to have it, Donald Trump, to win, and for good reason. As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that. Going on, this document says, and this is by the CIA, the strategy included efforts to use Chinese contacts with big U.S. companies to influence U.S. business leaders to turn against the President of the United States of America. The Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him, as many as they could, and they didn't care what they said. The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them, charged them billions and billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and built the strongest military anywhere in the world. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world. These are exact quotes from the CIA reporting. The name of the person doing the quote is now under review, but it gets even worse. Raw intelligence obtained by the FBI in 2020, yet buried by rogue bureaucrats, stated that China's activities even included an attempt to manufacture illegal ballots for Joe Biden. Documents show that during this period, dozens of significant CIA and NSA reports about China's election targeting were kept out of the presidential briefing. These were briefings I would get almost every day. Everything was kept out that was of importance. One email among intelligence analysts admitted that they had, quote, deliberately massaged the presidential daily briefing to withhold information regarding Chinese activities related to the election. Another official inside the FBI wrote that she was running, quote, a shadow government, unquote, to keep intelligence about China's election meddling from becoming known and to keep it away from the honorable press. Other officials who witnessed such efforts perceived the motivations to be blatantly political. Recently, we found significant numbers of burn bags in formation, and this is a group of bags that were used to destroy information given by President Barack Hussein Obama to be burned. It was supposed to be burned. These bags were supposed to be at a different level by different people, incinerated and checked, but it never happened. Maybe we got lucky. We believe this was not done on purpose, but rather through gross incompetence of the people that were supposed to burn the bags. But the findings are stunning. Today, I'm asking the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the CIA to investigate how and why such crucial information was hidden, to fire those involved in the cover-up, and to file criminal charges, if appropriate, against these people. Yet concealing China's meddling was only the beginning. The third set of documents we are releasing proves that for many years, Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems. Dishonest, almost all. They're vulnerable and they're easily compromised, and people within our government knew that. Tonight, we're publishing a series of previously classified U.S. intelligence community assessments and other reports proving that our government has long known these machines are extremely exposed to attack. As one assessment states, we judge that the United States adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure. That's unquote, but that's some statement, isn't it? Made by supposedly great patriots of our country. The document goes on to further state that, quote, we assess that centralized election-related data repositories, such as voter registration databases, poll books, and other official election websites, are most vulnerable to exploitation, and adversaries could use this access to these systems to disrupt election processes within the United States of America. Tonight, we're releasing all of those findings, and spanning from January 2020 to June 2026. This is a cyber threat aimed at the very heart of our democracy. Many people have questioned whether it could actually be possible to electronically manipulate vote totals or change election results on these terrible machines. Today, we are releasing documents that show the CIA obtained reporting of a specific plot to do a big number in favor of the corrupt Maduro regime in Venezuela. And that's exactly what happened, conspiring to digitally rig their own country's elections in 2020, and that's what they did. This reporting included precise details about methods to regime develop to digitally alter vote totals in ways that could not be detected even with an audit, no matter how deep they went. This intelligence underscores why we must take urgent action to ensure that our own system can never, ever be hacked or compromised like it was in the past. The fourth set of documents reveals that even when significant evidence of fraud has been detected, it has been buried and covered up. Among the disclosures tonight are FBI files detailing evidence of alleged fraud by a large-scale voter registration operation in Michigan. In 2020, Michigan State Police raided a Democrat Get Out the Vote organization, corrupt group in Muskegon. And we're so concerned by what they found. They were just so concerned, they couldn't believe it, actually, that they contacted the FBI in Detroit. The documents state that some canvassers admitted to FBI agents that they signed voter registration forms in other people's names, submitted fraudulent registration for people who did not exist, and received gift cards tied to their number of applications that they produced. In other words, it was pay, play, and cheat. The FBI agents working on the case believe that crimes were committed, yet the Biden Department of Justice slow-walked the investigation and killed it. Tonight, I'm asking the FBI director to ensure that the matter is fully investigated and to work with the Department of Justice to prosecute those responsible for any crimes. Finally, to reveal just how vulnerable our elections continue to be, we are releasing the results of a stunning investigation by the Department of Homeland Security. According to the DHS review of state voter rolls and public records, they identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Since Democrat states refuse to share their voter files, the real number is actually much higher than that. Yet, even this limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote. Put together, these disclosures reveal an election system so broken and so vulnerable that no one can possibly defend it. It is not defensible. Hundreds of millions of U.S. voter files are in the hands of foreign governments. Our machines and ballot counting systems are exposed to hacking and manipulation and corruption. China and other countries have been trying to meddle in our elections. Evidence of fraud has been buried. Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls, and yet we still have elections with no voter ID, no proof of citizenship, and tens of millions of ballots floating aimlessly through the mail. As one example of the insanity, California's recent election for mayor of LA and governor was held on June 2nd, a long time ago, but it was just completed a few days ago on July 10th. Think of that, much more than 1 month. Took a month to count the votes. I wonder what they were doing. This is worse than any third world country. There's no third world country that has elections like we have. In a rare move, NBC and ABC Fake News have both said that they would not cover this speech. They knew what it was about because of the fact that they don't like the topic, because they know how corrupt our system is and they don't want to reveal it. They and others in the media are part of a plot. They want to continue this fraud for whatever reason. They want to keep it going. They want to protect the radical left. They can't have a great country, and that's true. You can't have a great country without free and fair elections. Fraud like this should mean a revocation of their licenses. They use our public multi-billion-dollar in value airways for absolutely no money. They pay nothing. All we want is honesty in our elections and honesty in reporting. They pay nothing for multi-billion-dollar assets. Great damage has been done to our country. Our elections were left vulnerable to being rigged and stolen, and the trust of the American people was lost. This cannot be allowed to continue. Every American, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or otherwise, should be able to agree that we deserve the most secure, honest, and fair election system anywhere in the world. Secure elections should be a partisan, really, we should be together, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everybody, and it should not be a partisan issue. It should cause to unite us, not to divide us. This should be a cause. We should be united, not divided. In light of the brand new and irrefutable information I have revealed tonight, my administration is in the process of notifying the states whose election data was compromised by the People's Republic of China and many others. We will be working closely to mitigate any harm, and we're taking swift action to ensure that sensitive voter data is better protected so we can never be bought, we can never be hacked, and we can never watch a stolen election again. Tomorrow, the Secretary of Homeland Security will hold a briefing to outline his department's recent work confirming cyber vulnerabilities in our electronic voting systems. They are bad. We're in the process of informing governors, senators, and members of Congress of potential issues in their states. If you look at voting today, it's in such bad shape in so many states, and we are committing to fix it. And we're also committing to be working with those states and local jurisdictions to help them fix and patch known technical vulnerabilities before the midterm elections. We have very important elections coming up. We want those elections to be honest. I've also ordered DHS to notify every state about non-citizens on their voter rolls and direct them to remove all ineligible voters from the lists immediately. But most importantly, addressing this crisis of election security demands that Congress must pass the Save America Act. How easy is that to do unless you want to cheat? The only reason you wouldn't do it is you want to cheat because your policies are so bad and your candidates are so pathetic that you can't get away or can't get elected any other way. This landmark bill requires that all voters must show photo voter ID. How simple is that? Could I have your photo, please? Photo voter ID. All voters must provide proof of citizenship. Are you a citizen of our country, please? And hopefully there will be no corrupt mail-in ballots, which if you watched California and so many other places, mail-in ballots are inherently corrupt. So you would have no mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military deployment, or travel if you're going away on business or vacation. These reforms are urgently needed to stop the vulnerabilities that I've mentioned. To all Americans, I ask you to pick up your phone tomorrow, call your representatives in the House and Senate, and demand that they pass the Save America Act without delay. Together, we will restore faith and confidence in our country, and we will be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our great military. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
The president delivering a primetime national address tonight from the White House saying, quote, no trust equals no greatness when it comes to our elections. The commander-in-chief tonight declassifying critical intelligence showing foreign interference in our elections, including from China. Tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states bought, stolen, or were hacked from China, according to the president. You know, this makes a little bit of sense if you look back at 2020. We saw that first administration under President Trump, all that momentum. We saw Joe Biden hiding in the basement trying to do a campaign. We saw a COVID pandemic happen. And then all of this with evidence and receipts right here that we just saw on Right Side Broadcasting Network. I believe we have a picture of some of the documents there, or at least some of the information that we are now looking through here at the network. The White House election integrity page right there saying ensuring the integrity of our elections is fundamental to the preserving trust in American democracy. Following the 2020 presidential election, concerns about potential irregularities prompted detailed examinations of voting processes, data security, and registration practices across multiple states. Now, on that site, it says below you can download key documents and reports addressing key areas of election integrity. President Trump saying tonight, quote, for years, Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems. Does that not sound familiar? Mike Lindell, hopefully he wins that Minnesota governor election. The primary is August 11th. It'd be great to speak with Mike once again here on Right Side. Now on Truth Social, President Trump's account, maybe within 10 minutes, posted the National Intelligence Council memorandum. That's the image right there. So if you're watching on a screen right now, a TV, that kind of thing, if you have an extra phone or iPad or Surface or whatever, you can go to Truth Social and check out President Trump's page there. You're going to see that right there. Specifically, it says things like vulnerabilities in the U.S. 2020 election infrastructure, specifically saying we judge that U.S. adversaries, including at minimum Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure for the 2020 presidential election. Adversaries gaining access to U.S. election-related systems could disrupt the voting process, steal sensitive data, or undermine confidence in the election results. But we do not know whether any of them have specific plans to manipulate election-related systems. The key takeaway, this memo assesses the potential impact of cyber operations against U.S. Infrastructure for the 2020 presidential election, including the voting process and integrity of results. So we'll get back to some more of that information. Of course, tomorrow, President Trump saying there's a Department of Homeland Security press briefing that dives into more of the cybersecurity. We'll have that press briefing here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Isn't it interesting? You know, you remember those videos that we saw down in Georgia of them hiding the ballots underneath the tables, or you saw in all these different videos, the mules videos, right, where people are stuffing ballots. The COVID pandemic, you gotta vote by mail, everybody. While Joe Biden was hiding in his basement. And then when he would show up, there would be 6 people in circles, remember in COVID era? Or how about that time they had the vehicles pull up and honk their horns at these ridiculous things that were going on? No wonder No wonder today, when Carolyn Levitt had to take on the fake news press, they were so concerned about the evidence and the receipts and the truth. No wonder. No wonder these networks did not want to air this speech tonight. This is what we're talking about when I say conservative media is the David versus the Goliath, figuratively speaking. And we know who wins. David does, figuratively speaking, in this situation. This is why conservative media is here to stay. This is why the American people are trusting RSBN and a number of other conservative outlets out there, people on X and Truth Social. We're cutting through the crap. We don't want any more of this mainstream media nonsense. They have such a big megaphone. Oh, this is the way it's supposed to be. All their BS narratives. No wonder. Tonight, hey, listen, I like Family Feud. And you might be asking, what the heck are you talking about? Well, one of the networks is deciding to play Celebrity Family Feud instead of air the president's speech. Well, there you go, guys. Let's pass the Save America Act. And if those of you that are loyal viewers that watch every day here, obviously we have some huge numbers tonight. We had some huge numbers on July 3rd. We had huge numbers on July 4th. I remember back in the day, right at this desk, we had huge numbers on November 5th, 2024. We're talking in the millions. And all these people watching. Well, we're doing this coverage each day, Monday through Friday, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's from that lens that is from we the people, from God, family, country, freedom. And you may have heard those that are the loyal viewers, right? I love all you guys out there watching. Thank you so much for doing so. But the loyal viewers every day watching with us, that crew, we talk about the Save America Act every day here. And I know sometimes I repeat myself, but holy smokes, you don't need to have some eloquent speech out there. Just pass the Save America Act. Let's get some momentum on Capitol Hill as we look at the live picture in D.C. And we heard President Trump tonight. It was nice to hear President Trump talk about this tonight. This is our night. This is the United States of America's night. This is we the people's night. A government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's our night. That's tonight. This Thursday, July 16th, 2026. And it's not drama. And it's not just playing TV. We see what's happened in London. We see what's happening in Dublin. We see what's happening, of course, in China. We see a little bit of what's happening in California, even though there's some great patriots out there. We don't want that in our country. We have freedom of speech here. We love our Constitution. We're not letting go of it. Let's pass the Save America Act. And let's also go to a few of our sponsors as we wrap up our coverage tonight. There's a lot of work to do as we now have all this evidence and receipts. It was the tip of the iceberg, that video in Georgia. The mules video where they showed all the stuffing of, that was the tip of the iceberg. Tulsi Gabbard, who is no longer the DNI chief. If you look at some of these reports here, she's the one that also helped release a lot of these documents as well earlier this year. And now these are declassified. So it's game on. It's time to pass the Save America Act, nuke the filibuster. Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama says to do it. President Trump says to do it. Because if we don't do that, as President Trump has said, if the Democrats get back in when it comes to, the House, the Senate, the presidential, you don't think that they're going to nuke the filibuster and do all the things that they're acting like, oh, we're going to respect the filibuster. Yeah, right. They want D.C. to be a state. Right there, not a District of Columbia. That would be a state. If we had a live picture of Puerto Rico, it would be a state. If you want to have a certain amount of justices in the Supreme Court, let's go up to maybe 21 of them. Let's push through all the stuff, all the woke, all the crap that the majority of this nation says we don't want. So we're in this together. I'm not reading from a teleprompter. Don't need one. The mainstream media does. All the producers out there typing, oh, let's not go live tonight. Let's put on Family Feud, which I love Family Feud. Let's go to a highlight from President Trump's speech as it's 9:37 Eastern Time.
As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that.
Evidence, receipts, and truth. Networks did not want to cover it tonight. And I asked the networks a question. First of all, if they were to ever offer me any kind of anything to work for them, obviously, never, ever, ever. If President Trump was lying tonight, right? The people on these networks say that he's, oh, these false claims of the election. You know, Joe Biden won that election. Why not air the speech then? Why not do your job as a true journalist? Investigate the claims. Because evidence and truth and facts win every day of the week. That's why you didn't want to cover it. Ridiculous, man. You guys are awful. You're awful. And thank God, everybody that's watching right now that is in media and you're conservative, or maybe you're working at a local TV station in, let's say, East Lansing, Michigan, and you're conservative and you're watching me right now, I was you. I was in the mainstream media. I had to go through all that flow. There wasn't that many conservative networks out there. Well, you know what? Join the right side of history. Join us, because guess what? We're staying here until Jesus returns. All right, let's do this. Let's wrap it up. What a night, guys. This is some real stuff that we just saw, and thank you so much for spending the time. If you'd like to follow us on Truth Social, it's at RSBN. On X, it's at RSB Network. I'm on X again. It's at Matthew US Media, or Matthew Alvarez, at Matthew Alvarez on Truth Social. To those that already follow, we're a family. You see the posts. I can't get enough of just posting about the American flag that I see. I love to just post it because it's just patriotic, and we love our country, and we know that it stands for freedom. And that's what we love the most about this country. And we're not going to give it up easily. We're going to fight for our freedom legally, lawfully, and spiritually. I remember hearing that from Alex Jones the other day. And yes, I like Alex Jones too. Anyway, let's go to mypillow.com/RSBN. Mike Lindell, I like Mike Lindell a lot too. This guy, I hope he wins. Minnesota, win that gubernatorial race there. mypillow.com/RSBN. Great products there you guys can check out if you'd like. A lot of great products on there, whether it's the pillows, the sheets, slides, all the things. mypillow.com/RSBN. And if you'd like to donate to the network, which some of you did tonight, thank you so much for doing so. rsbnetwork.com/donate. We're not bought and paid for by some stupid woke corporation out there. So we have some great sponsors, and with your dollars, that helps keep the lights on. You know what I mean? So let's do this, America. Let's get this Save America Act passed. For all of us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, my name is Matthew Alvarez. We'll see you here tomorrow as we continue our live coverage on RSBN.